Hi, welcome to Legal Studies, and today we're going to be learning about some factors that affect justice, such as cost, time, and accessibility in the civil justice system. So, where are we in the study design? Well, here we are. We've just finished learning about all of the steps that lead up to a civil trial, and now we're thinking about the system as a whole. What are some of the things that create problems for us? That's today's topic. And then your next topic is going to be looking at, well, what are some solutions that we have to those problems? So, thinking about today, what are some problems that we have in our civil justice system? And we'll start with cost. Um, so, one of the key factors that drives people away from our civil justice system is the fact that it can cost so much money. And it can be particularly expensive for some groups of people over others. So let's have a dive into some specific examples. So, first of all, not everyone can afford to be represented when they take their case to court. In civil law, cost can sometimes be even more of a barrier than a criminal case. If we look at some of the charges that some of the most prestigious civil law barristers charge, some of them charge up to $25,000 per day for their services. The higher the court that you're going to, let's say you're in the Supreme Court, the cost of filing fees, filing documents in those courts is greater than the costs in the lower courts. So we're going to have a disproportionate impact on people who have more serious cases. And then we've got the fact that legal aid is prioritised for criminal cases, which means if you've got a civil law problem, you're unlikely to get much, if any, assistance from legal aid. Here we've got a quote from legal aid's website on the right-hand side here, saying that most of their grants are given to criminal and family law matters, and very little are given to other types of cases. And then you've got all of your additional fees that you have to pay in a civil case. For example, if you want to file a writ in the Supreme Court. So if you want to start a case in the Supreme Court, that's going to cost you $742 just to begin a case. If you want to have a jury in your civil case, you're looking at approximately $600 a day for the first week and over $1,000 a day for every week, for every day after the first week. So we've got a number of different ways in which costs can pile up in civil cases. If you choose not to go to court, though, and you choose to go to VCAT, cost can still be an issue, although less of an issue. So filing fees and hearing fees tend to be lower in VCAT than in court. So, for example, if you've got a residential tenancy complaint, an application fee for VCAT for most matters in that area are about $66. On the other hand, in recent years, even though VCAT is cheap, its fees have increased, especially if you're a corporate, a business user. And some of the fees for corporations can be in the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, depending on how large the case is. Whereas individual fees or fees if you're a concession card holder are much lower or sometimes free. Our next factor for us to think about are time factors. So we've thought about how cost can impact civil cases. Now let's have a look at what sort of delays our civil system experiences. So we can think about delays in our court system itself, delays caused by pretrial procedures, as well as delays related to preparing and gathering evidence in a trial. So some examples for us of how court delays can impact on the principles of justice. The longer we wait to have a trial, the more impact it's going to have on the reliability of our evidence. For example, if you've waited 10, 15, 20 years, or there's been such a great delay in bringing the case to court, you're going to have witnesses who are really struggling to remember things. You might find it hard to find documents and evidence that existed 20 years ago. So some examples of that are lawsuits relating to cancer and disease caused by working with asbestos. Often, working with asbestos can cause really serious health issues, but only decades and decades later. And so in those sorts of cases, those delays, they're no fault of the legal system, but we can see the impact it's going to have on the reliability of evidence. It's going to be much harder to find witnesses. Maybe some of those witnesses aren't even alive anymore. Further, delays can really seriously impact on the victim, especially if they've suffered injuries and they're waiting for the court case to happen, and they're injured throughout that whole time, and they're needing this money from the court case to pay for their medical fees and things like that. Delays can have a serious impact on them. And delays can cause some parties either not to pursue their claim or to settle or withdraw their claim and give up. So an example of or both of these things sort of happening is the Mabo case. So Eddie Mabo basically pursued a case trying to get the court to recognise that Indigenous people had rights to the land of Australia. And he was successful eventually in that case, but unfortunately for him, Mabo died before he won his case. So the case kept going, but Mabo himself didn't get to see it. So we can see how impactful delays can be in our civil justice system. If we think then about, we've thought a little bit about court delays, let's have a look at how VCAT tries to solve some of these issues. So VCAT does aim to be quicker, speedier than court, but even VCAT has some issues. So for example, its busiest list, the residential tenancies list, that wait time, the average wait time for a hearing has grown from 2 weeks in 2016 up to 5 weeks in 2021. So even the wait times in VCAT are getting worse, but still a 5-week wait is not anywhere near as bad as you'd be looking at for a court case. And then some of the other lists, though, they have much longer wait times, up into the 20 to 30 weeks, if not longer. All right, so VCAT does try and solve the delay issue, but it's not perfect. Another solution that we've tried to implement in our civil justice system is the use of case management powers, letting judges have really broad range of powers to manage cases and to get things done quickly and efficiently. So telling the parties, you need to get this done by this particular time, or limiting the amount of documents they can provide, limiting the amount of witnesses that they can call, forcing people to go to mediation. These are all powers we've given to judges to try and solve this delay issue in our civil justice system. And then finally, the third and last factor we're thinking about is accessibility issues in our justice system. So, for example, barriers to communication is a big one, language being the biggest and most obvious example of that. It's just as much of a problem in civil law as it is in criminal law. If you don't speak the language, you're less likely to be able to use the legal system to be able to resolve your problem. And you'll have reduced access to justice. Other issues with access are lack of services in rural and remote regions. So it's legal aid and dispute resolution can be harder to get in rural areas. You may not have a courtroom near you. Now, we have tried to solve that by having the courts and VCAT have trials and hearings in lots of different places across Victoria. We have a system called a circuit court where judges travel to different areas in remote and rural locations and hold court there. So we have some solutions, but it's not perfect. There are definitely people who live in remote and rural areas who just don't have a courtroom near them, and that's going to discourage them from using our legal system. One of the ways in which we try and promote accessibility is through our use of representative proceedings or class actions. So by allowing multiple people to group together, you're more likely to have people being able to become part of a lawsuit that they might not have bothered to begin if it was just them alone. And so this is one of the ways we're trying to combat accessibility issues, combat cost issues. All right, you don't have to have, if you're part of a representative proceeding, you won't have to pay any of those big legal costs. Usually, if you're just one of the members of the representative proceeding. So that's it for our factors affecting justice. As I said, we've learnt about how cost, time, and accessibility all have an impact on justice in our civil justice system. See you next time.